Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Justin Cancel.
My name is Kevin Roman.
My name is Max Levy.
My name is Vanessa Gibson.
And we're going to be having a presentation on the IAT Effect Size. So before we begin, I just wanted us to ask what an IAT is. An IAT stands for Implicit Association Test. And what this is used for, as you can see from the picture, you have the participant, and their job is to associate the speaking number, which is this one right here, to either boy, girl, math, or reading. And as you can see, it's on the boy side with the math, so she's clicking the left side. And then here on the right side, you can see that it's the same word numbers, but yet math is over here on the girl side. And the whole point of it is to try to find implicit biases that a participant might have but might not be aware of. So for example, this is considered an easy fast trial because usually boys are typically said to be better at math and girls better at reading. Therefore, it's easy to say numbers goes with math or goes to boys. While as here, it's a hard trial because numbers is with the girls in math as opposed to with reading with the boys. So and, this program here measures the reaction times, and then from there, it tells you what kind of bias you have. So why is this needed? It's good for, like I said, understanding bias. And there are many different ways that you can go about comparing two different things. For example, black-whites, disabilities, and able people. And so in this study, that's what they're going to be focusing on the effect size of those. And then there's different criteria, but does that provide different biases? So by comparing the criteria of both sets of authors, we're able to see if they produce the same result, even though they had different criteria. And then both were trying to understand the IATs for black and white, yet can their same criteria be used, for example, disabled people versus able people? So what the introduction, the question that the article is trying to ask is that is there a correct criteria for an IAT, as well as the effect size belonging to it? And then does one criteria provide similar results on a different IATs? And then what is the article going to discuss? It's going to compare two sets of authors' results for an IAT. The first set you can see here, which is going to be abbreviated to GPUB, and then the other, you can see on the bottom, is going to be abbreviated to OMBJT. So they both had the IAT focusing on black and white, yet the criteria was different, so this article is going to mainly be providing the differences as well as the methods for how the comparisons are executed.
Hello. I'll be presenting about different criteria for including students in the individual meta-analysis. To start off with, we have the GPUB that had 122 reports, categorizing into 9 domains. And these 9 domains include the black versus white race, other stigmatized groups, gender, sexual orientation, consumer preferences, political references, personality traits, alcohol and drug use, and clinical phenomena. In addition, there was also close relationships. And the OMBGT focused on the first 2 primary ones that are black and white race and other stigmatized groups. For the GPUBs, the inclusion was guided mostly by the author's expectations, the attitude behavior correlation, and the stereotype judgment correlation. For the OMBGT, it had a much broader perspective towards it. The inclusion had a criterion measured in a form of discrimination. The effect sizes measure in the 2 meta-analysis. There was a difference in method and between the GPUB and the OMBGT. There was a difference in their policies and including effect sizes. Their effect sizes inclusion in strategies. The OMBGT average was of the ICC was a correlation of 0.132 plus or minus 0.04. While there was an average on the correlation between the 2 meta-analysis correlating in 0.259 plus or minus 0.06. While the GPUB inclusion was a correlation of 0.237 and a plus or minus 0.1.
I'm going to be talking about the effects of different effect size inclusion criteria. So first, GPUB's criteria was more stringent and more specific than OMBJTs, which made it so that there were less reports actually analyzed and less data for GPUB's reports. OMBJT's criteria allowed for a larger sample size, and they did this by accumulating raw data from different reports in order to compute ICCs, which are IAT criterion correlations that were not originally computed by or in those reports. And also OMBJT subdivided some of GPUB's sources, which allowed for more data. And there were two ways they could have done this. The first way was subdividing by sample data, which if they were to have done that, they should have seen no directional effect on magnitudes of aggregate correlations. And the second was subdividing by variable. And by dividing by variable, it would necessarily reduce the estimated aggregate correlation magnitude. And when they did this, they actually did subdivide by sample size, but they saw a reduction in the associated correlations. And I would like to also talk about what would happen if they used the same inclusion criteria for effect size. So there were two ways to do this. First was abiding by GPUB's criteria. And to do this, OMBJT would have to drop ICCs that didn't fit GPUB's criteria. And to do this, they would have to take out certain studies that did not fit the 9 domains of their study, or just different criterion that they had in order to slim down the amount of reports that they had. And this correlation, when they did that, became R equals 0.177 with a p-value of 0.05. And limiting OMBJT's sample, by doing this, they limited this by using a predictor. And the predictor was a black and white IATs, so attitudes and stereotypes, different questions that asked about that, and different reports that specifically stated about that. And by doing this, they reduced the amount of ICCs from 195 to 133. And they did not give a R value for that. So also they assessed moderators for predictive ability of the IAT. So first, GPUB identified 4 significant moderators. The first was correspondence, which is a similarity between, which was operationalized as a similarity between verbal descriptions of IAT measures and the criterion measures and the criterion measure with which it was correlated. Social sensitivity, which was operationalized as the extent to which self-reporting of the construct assessed by the measure might activate concerns about the impression that the response would make on others. Complementary, which was the extent to which liking one of the 2 IAT target categories in a measure implied liking the other or disliking the other. And finally, implicit. This was explicit correlations, and this was operationalized through magnitude of correlation between IAT measure and parallel self-report measures. OMBJT utilized a new meta-analysis method of determining moderations of predictability for the IAT. What they did was they had 2 substantial subcategories out of the reports, and the first moderator was behavior toward black and white persons, and the second moderator were reports and questions that related to IAT stereotype measures.
So I will be talking about the discussion section. And in the discussion section, both inclusion strategies were justifiable, even if not equally suited to assessing predictive validity. So in the OMBJT data inclusion strategy, it included any study for which an ICC could be completed where the criterion arguably measured some form of discrimination, which led to the inclusion of the ICCs that were excluded in GPUB's strategy. And they also talked about how GPUB's strategy was still reasonable, and it fits well with well-known methodological strategies of assessing discriminant validity. And also they noted that effect size was important in understanding consequential validity. And the analysis of the two studies showed that conventionally small effect sizes have substantial societal significance. And with that substantial societal significance, the societal significance of discrimination was predictable from the IAT measures. And the IAT measures can be used to predict discrimination in personnel decisions, criminal justice decisions, law enforcement decisions, educational and healthcare decisions. And the small effect sizes comprise significant discrimination. And it was even noted that US courts in 1960s have used statistical criterion of discrimination that translates to correlational effect sizes that are often smaller than R equaling 0.10. Smaller effect sizes also predict substantial discrimination and biases affecting many people. And the cumulative impact of that are that biases can also affect the same persons repeatedly. And these small effects can produce substantial discriminatory impact by accumulating over repeated occurrences to the same person or groups of people. And this can occur within employment, in healthcare, educational, and law enforcement settings. So within the conclusions, there were two main conclusions from the analysis of the disagreement between the meta-analytic conclusions of the GPUB and OMBJT. So the differences in the two meta-analyses published were due to differences in the methods that they used, and both meta-analyses estimated aggregate correlational effect sizes that are large enough to justify concluding that IAT measures predict societally important discrimination. And there were also two important empirical findings that were supported by each meta-analysis. Both of the studies agreed that the predictive validity of the black-white IAT is approximately at 0.20, and that there was an agreed expectance that there was more than 4% of variance in discrimination relevant criterion measures, as is predicted by black-white race IAT measures. So thank you very much.